The first time I realized my family had already divided my belongings in their minds, I was standing in my own kitchen holding a tray of coffee. My niece Emily was leaning against the counter, looking around the room as if she were inspecting a house she planned to buy. She pointed toward the wall between the kitchen and dining room and said, almost casually, "When this house becomes mine, I'm probably going to knock that wall down. The kitchen feels too closed off." For a few seconds, I genuinely thought I had misunderstood her. I looked at her, waiting for her to laugh or explain that she was joking, but she simply picked up her coffee and took a sip. Then she added, "Mom said you and Uncle Michael will probably leave the house to me because Sophie doesn't really like this neighborhood." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. My husband and I were both alive, healthy, and standing only a few feet away, yet my sister and her daughters were already discussing what would happen to our home after we died. They had apparently gone as far as deciding which niece would receive it and what renovations she would make. I forced a small smile and asked Emily why her mother would say something like that. She shrugged as if the answer were obvious. "You don't have children, Aunt Linda." Who else would it go to? That question followed me for months. My name is Linda. I was 61 at the time, and my husband Michael was 64. We had been married for 37 years. We never had children, although not by choice. When we were younger, we spent almost a decade trying to become parents. There were doctor visits, treatments, procedures, hopeful phone calls, and more disappointment than I care to remember. Twice I became pregnant, and twice we lost the baby before the second trimester. After the second loss, I stopped entering the room we had planned to turn into a nursery. Michael eventually converted it into a small office, but for years, I could still see the pale yellow paint we had chosen behind the shelves. People often assume that couples without children have extra money. They imagine expensive vacations, luxury cars, and large retirement accounts. That was never our life. Michael worked as an electrical supervisor, and I spent most of my career managing the front office of a dental clinic. We earned enough to live comfortably, but we were ordinary middle-class people. We paid our mortgage, saved when we could, drove our cars until they were no longer reliable, and worried about medical costs like everyone else. Our greatest financial achievement was paying off our small 3-bedroom house 6 years before Michael retired. It was not a mansion. It had an aging roof, a narrow kitchen, and a backyard that flooded slightly whenever it rained too heavily. But it was ours. We had painted every room ourselves, planted the maple tree in the front yard, repaired the porch, replaced the bathroom tiles, and hosted nearly every family holiday there for more than 20 years. That house held our entire married life. Hearing my niece speak about it, as if she were waiting for us to vacate it, felt less like an innocent comment, and more like someone measuring the curtains while we were still sitting in the room. My younger sister Karen had always lived differently from me. She married Richard when she was 26. Richard came from a wealthy family and later took over part of his father's commercial property business. Karen never needed to worry about money after that. They lived in a gated neighborhood, belonged to a country club, and took 2 major vacations every year. Their daughters, Emily and Sophie, attended private schools, studied abroad, and received new cars before they graduated high school. I loved my nieces. I had attended their school plays, remembered every birthday, and spent countless weekends babysitting when they were young. When Emily was 9, she broke her arm at a skating rink while Karen and Richard were in Europe. I stayed beside her in the emergency room until morning. When Sophie struggled with anxiety during her first semester of college, she called me nearly every night because she said I listened without judging her. I never viewed them as spoiled children, even though they had been given almost everything. I told myself that privilege did not automatically make someone unkind. But as they grew older, small comments began revealing how little they understood about ordinary life. Emily once complained for 20 minutes because the dealership could not deliver her preferred BMW interior color before her birthday. Sophie refused to attend a cousin's wedding because the hotel did not have a spa. During one Christmas dinner, Emily said she could never date someone who earned less than 6 figures because she did not want to struggle. At that time, she had never paid her own phone bill. Still, I ignored it. They were young. They had grown up differently. I did not want to become the bitter aunt who criticized everything her nieces did, but the comment about our house stayed with me because it had not come from nowhere. Emily had specifically said, "Mom told me." That meant Karen had been discussing our estate with her daughters without ever speaking to us. That evening, after everyone left, I told Michael what Emily had said. He was washing coffee cups and stopped with his hands under the running water. She really said the house would be hers. Not just that, I replied. She already knows which wall she wants to remove. Michael tried to laugh, but I could see the discomfort in his face. She's 23. Maybe she was trying to be funny. She was. He turned off the faucet and dried his hands. Then Karen is the one we should be concerned about. That was the first time either of us said it aloud. We had always assumed that our remaining assets would eventually pass to family. We had never created a detailed estate plan because there did not seem to be any urgency. Our retirement accounts listed each other as beneficiaries. Our house was jointly owned. We had basic wills from years earlier naming Karen as the person who would inherit after both of us died. It had seemed simple and natural at the time. She was my only sibling. Her daughters were the closest thing we had to children. But the more we discussed it, the less natural it felt. A few weeks later, Karen invited me to lunch. I wondered whether Emily had told her about our conversation, but Karen never mentioned it. Instead, halfway through the meal, she began talking about Richard's mother, who was in her late 80s and lived alone in a large home. Karen explained that when her mother-in-law died, Richard and his brother expected to inherit several properties and a large investment portfolio. She spoke about it with a strange mixture of impatience and excitement. Richard thinks we should sell the lake house immediately, she said. Emily wants it, but maintaining another property would be ridiculous. She'll inherit enough money to buy her own lake house one day. I stared at her. Emily recently inherited money from Richard's father too, didn't she? Karen nodded. A trust. It's not accessible yet, but yes, both girls are very well protected. Richard's family believes in keeping wealth within the family. There was a slight emphasis in the way she said the last sentence. At the time, I could not tell whether it was intentional. I asked how much money the girls would eventually receive. Karen smiled and said, enough that neither of them should ever have to worry, as long as they aren't foolish. Then she leaned closer and lowered her voice. Honestly, Linda, that's what parents and family are supposed to do. We build something and pass it down. Otherwise, what was the point? I knew then that the conversation was not random. I replied carefully. Michael and I may use most of what we have during retirement. Of course, she said quickly. I'm not talking about you. You should enjoy yourselves. But her expression had changed. She took a sip of water and added, still, the house alone will probably be worth a lot someday. There it was again, the house. I left lunch feeling as though I had been tested. Karen had not directly asked about our will, but she had made sure to remind me what she believed family members were supposed to do. She also knew that her daughters were already expected to inherit more money than Michael and I had earned in decades of work. That night, I searched for local estate attorneys. Michael and I met with one the following month. His name was David Coleman, and his office was on the second floor of a converted Victorian house. He asked us detailed questions about our health, property, retirement accounts, insurance policies, and family relationships. When we told him we had no children, he asked whether we had strong charitable interests. I hesitated. Until that moment, charity had only been a vague idea. I had donated small amounts to organizations, volunteered occasionally, and supported holiday drives, but I had never imagined leaving my entire estate to one. David explained that couples without direct descendants often divided their assets between relatives and causes that mattered to them. He also warned us that naming a family member as executor could become complicated when that person was also expecting to inherit. An executor needs to be organized, patient, and capable of managing conflict, he said. You can name a professional fiduciary or your attorney's office if you do not want to place that responsibility on family. The idea immediately appealed to me. I did not want Karen sorting through our belongings, deciding what had value, or supervising the sale of our home while her daughters discussed renovation plans. David asked whether we had concerns about family members challenging the will. Michael and I looked at each other. At the moment, they don't know we're considering changes, Michael said. David nodded. You are not legally required to discuss your estate decisions with anyone. However, surprise can sometimes create conflict. Clear documentation is important, particularly if you are intentionally excluding a close relative. The word excluding made me uncomfortable. I did not want to punish anyone. I did not even dislike my nieces. The issue was simply that they did not need our money. They already had family trusts, property, financially secure parents, and wealthy grandparents. If our estate was worth several $100,000 after both of us died, that money would barely change their lives. It might fund another vacation, a newer car, or a down payment on a second property. For someone else, it could change everything. A few months before our meeting with David, I had begun volunteering at a women's shelter through a program organized by my former workplace. The shelter served women escaping domestic violence, many of whom arrived with children and almost nothing else. Some came in the middle of the night wearing pajamas. Others had spent weeks sleeping in cars before gathering the courage to ask for help. One Wednesday, I met a woman named Maria. She was 32 and had 2 daughters, ages 6 and 9. Her husband had controlled every dollar in their household. She had not been allowed to work, open a bank account, or speak privately to her family. When she finally left, she had $23, a plastic grocery bag filled with clothes, and no idea where she would live after the shelter's temporary placement ended. Maria was intelligent, patient, and determined. She wanted to complete a nursing assistant program so she could support her daughters. The course cost less than one of Emily's handbags. I began thinking about how differently money functioned depending on who received it. $10,000 might be a forgettable addition to one person's investment account. To another, it could mean education, housing, childcare, safety, or freedom. If you're listening to this story and you enjoy emotional family dilemmas, difficult choices, and quiet decisions that change everything, welcome to Unheard Drama Stories. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because what happened after my family discovered our plans turned an uncomfortable situation into a battle I never expected. Michael and I did not change the will immediately. We spent nearly 6 months discussing possibilities. At first, Michael suggested splitting everything, half to the nieces and half to charity. It sounded fair, but the more we talked, the more arbitrary it seemed. What would $50,000 do for Emily? I asked one evening. She'd probably invest it, Michael said. And what would $50,000 do for the shelter? He knew the answer. It could fund emergency housing, legal assistance, transportation, and training for several families. Eventually, Michael said something that settled the matter. Maybe inheritance should go where it has the greatest impact, not simply where tradition says it belongs. We decided that after the surviving spouse died, the house would be sold. A portion of the estate would go to the women's shelter. Another portion would establish scholarships for students from low-income families who were the first in their household to attend college. We also planned smaller donations to a local food bank and an animal rescue Michael had supported for years. We did not completely exclude our family. We prepared a list of personal belongings and family heirlooms. Karen would receive our mother's jewelry and photo albums. Emily would receive the antique writing desk that had belonged to our grandmother. Sophie would receive a collection of handmade quilts and several pieces of art she had always admired. We also set aside a modest amount for each niece, enough to communicate love, but not enough to reduce what the charities would receive significantly. When we signed the new documents, I felt nervous but peaceful. For the first time, our estate reflected our values rather than an assumption we had never examined. We told no one. For almost a year, nothing happened. Then the comments became more frequent. Emily asked whether we planned to replace the roof or leave it for the next owner. Sophie asked if the furniture in our guest bedroom was antique. Karen suggested we create a detailed inventory of valuables so that nothing important disappeared during probate. At Thanksgiving, Richard joked that Michael should stop buying tools because the girls won't know what to do with all that junk when you're gone. Each remark could have been dismissed as humor. Together, they made me feel as though my family viewed us as a future transaction. The worst moment came during Christmas dinner. Michael had gone into the garage to find an extra folding chair. I was in the hallway when I heard Emily and Sophie talking in the living room. They did not know I was nearby. Sophie said, "I don't want the house, you can have it." Emily replied, "I know. Mom already said it makes more sense for me because I live closer." "What about the money?" "I assume that gets divided." Sophie lowered her voice. "Do you think Aunt Linda has much?" Emily answered, "Probably more than she acts like. No kids, paid-off house, 2 retirement accounts. Mom said people like them usually save a lot." I stood frozen behind the wall. Then Sophie laughed. "That sounds horrible. We're talking like they're already dead." Emily replied, "We're not wishing for it. We're just being realistic." I walked into the room carrying a stack of napkins. Both girls immediately stopped speaking. Emily smiled too brightly and asked whether I needed help. I said no. For the rest of dinner, I watched everyone differently. Karen praised the food, Richard opened another bottle of wine, and my nieces chatted about vacation plans. They appeared loving and normal. Maybe they were. Human beings can love someone and still feel entitled to what that person owns. Those things are not mutually exclusive. After everyone left, I told Michael what I had overheard. He sat silently for a long time. Finally, he said, "I'm glad we changed it." So was I. The situation might have remained private if Karen had not found a way to learn about the new will. To this day, I am not entirely sure how it happened. David's office later confirmed that no one there had shared information. My best guess is that Karen saw a letter from the attorney when she entered our house while we were away. Michael and I had gone out of town for 4 days to attend a friend's anniversary celebration. Karen had a spare key for emergencies. During our trip, a storm damaged part of our fence. Karen stopped by to check the property and sent us photographs. At some point, she must have seen an envelope on the desk addressed from Coleman Estate Planning. She may have opened it, or she may simply have searched the attorney's name and guessed why we had hired him. 2 weeks after we returned, she called and invited me to lunch. Her voice sounded tense. I knew something was wrong. We met at a small restaurant near her house. Before the server had even taken our order, Karen placed both hands on the table and asked, "Did you change your will?" I stared at her. "Why are you asking?" "That isn't an answer." "It's also none of your business." Her face turned red. "So you did." I kept my voice calm. "Michael and I completed our estate planning. That is all you need to know." Karen leaned back as if I had insulted her. "I heard you're leaving everything to charities." The fact that she knew that much shocked me. "Who told you?" She ignored the question. "Is it true?" "I'm not discussing private financial documents with you." Her expression hardened. "Linda, I am your sister. Emily and Sophie are your only nieces. They have treated you like a second mother their entire lives, and you're planning to give everything to strangers." I felt anger rising, but I kept it under control. "They have not treated me like a second mother. I love them, but they have parents, wealthy parents. They also have trusts and future inheritances." "So this is jealousy?" "No." "It sounds like jealousy." I looked directly at her. "Emily told me she planned to remove my kitchen wall when the house became hers. She said you told her the house would belong to her." For the first time, Karen looked embarrassed, but the expression disappeared quickly. "That was a casual conversation," she said. "You discussed ownership of my home while I'm still alive. You don't have children, Linda. Of course people assume your estate will go to family. Assuming is one thing, dividing it is another." Karen lowered her voice. "Do you understand how humiliating this will be? People will think you hated us. Who exactly will be reviewing my will for social approval?" "You know what I mean." "No, I don't." She stared at me for several seconds before saying, "Richard's family keeps wealth within the family. That is how responsible people build generational security. Your daughters already have generational security. That doesn't matter, they are still your family. And the women at the shelter are still human beings." Karen gave a bitter laugh. "So this is about that place. You volunteer there twice a month, and suddenly they matter more than your own nieces. It isn't a competition." "It clearly is." The server approached our table, sensed the tension, and quietly walked away. Karen's eyes filled with tears, but I knew my sister well enough to recognize that she was angry, not heartbroken. "I cannot believe you would do this to my daughters." Do what? Refuse to give them property they never owned. You are taking something away from them. I shook my head. You cannot take away something that was never theirs. That sentence ended the conversation. Karen stood, grabbed her handbag, and said, "You're going to regret this. When you need family, remember that you chose strangers." Then she walked out. For the next several weeks, she did exactly what I had feared. She told relatives a version of the story in which Michael and I had suddenly disinherited two loving nieces because we resented their parents' success. Cousins I had not spoken to in years called to ask whether I was angry with Karen. An aunt sent me a message saying that blood should always come before outsiders. Richard left Michael a voicemail accusing us of trying to make a statement at his family's expense. Emily called me crying. "Aunt Linda, did I do something wrong?" I did not want to hurt her, but I also refused to pretend nothing had happened. "You spoke about my house as though it already belonged to you," I said. "You and Sophie discussed dividing our money while we were hosting you for Christmas." She went silent. "You heard that?" "Yes." "I'm sorry." "I believe you, but I need you to understand why it affected me. I never wanted you to die." "I know that, but you expected to benefit when I did." She began crying harder. "Mom always said you would leave everything to us. I thought it was already arranged." That statement confirmed what I suspected. Karen had not made one casual remark. She had raised her daughters to believe our estate was part of their future. Emily then said something that hurt more than I expected. "I know we don't need the money, but it feels like you're choosing other people over us." I replied, "I'm choosing to help people whose lives can actually be changed. That doesn't mean I love you less." "It feels like it does." "I'm sorry it feels that way." The call ended without resolution. For nearly 6 months, Karen stopped inviting us to family events. We learned through social media that they had hosted Easter brunch. My birthday passed with a short text from Emily and nothing from Karen. Sophie stopped calling altogether. At first, I was devastated. I wondered whether the estate was worth losing my family. I questioned myself repeatedly. Maybe we should have divided everything equally. Maybe tradition mattered more than impact. Maybe I was being self-righteous. Michael never pressured me, but one night he asked, would changing the will restore the relationship, or would it only reward their behavior? I knew the answer. If we reversed our decision to regain access to the family, every future invitation would feel purchased. Every act of affection would carry a price. So we did nothing. Then something unexpected happened. Emily came to our house alone. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon, almost a year after the argument. She stood on the porch holding an umbrella and looked exhausted. I invited her inside. For a few minutes, we made small talk. Then she placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a check made out to the women's shelter. It was for $5,000. I looked at her in confusion. Emily said, "I started volunteering." I did not know what to say. She explained that after our conversation, she had been angry. She believed I was judging her for growing up wealthy. To prove that the shelter was not as meaningful as I claimed, she signed up for a volunteer orientation. She expected to spend a few hours sorting donations and then never return. Instead, she met a 19-year-old woman who had arrived with an infant and no safe place to go. The woman had dropped out of college, lost contact with her family, and spent months trapped in an abusive relationship. Emily helped her complete housing applications and later drove her to a job interview. "I realized something," Emily said quietly. $5,000 is less than what Dad spent on my birthday trip last year. I barely remember that trip. But $5,000 can pay a security deposit, childcare, transportation, and several months of groceries for someone trying to start over. I felt tears filling my eyes. Emily continued, "I was entitled. I thought inheritance was automatic because Mom always talked about it that way. I'm sorry I treated your life like a future financial event." I reached across the table and held her hand. She asked whether I had completely removed her and Sophie from the will. I considered lying, but honesty felt better. "You both receive personal family items and a small amount of money. Most of the estate goes to charity." Emily nodded slowly. "That sounds fair." Then she surprised me again. "Sophie won't understand yet, Mom definitely won't, but I do. Our relationship did not repair instantly, but that afternoon opened a door. Emily began visiting regularly. She continued volunteering and eventually joined the shelter's fundraising committee. She also started paying her own expenses despite her parents' objections. For the first time in her life, she wanted to understand what things cost. Karen viewed Emily's change as a betrayal. She accused me of manipulating her daughter and filling her head with guilt. Emily finally confronted her. I was not present, but Emily later told me what happened. Karen said, "Your aunt is giving away what should belong to you." Emily replied, "Nothing she owns belongs to me." Karen argued that wealth should stay within the family. Emily said, "We already have wealth. What we don't have is perspective." According to Emily, Karen slapped her hand against the kitchen counter and demanded to know whether she would refuse the inheritance if I changed my mind. Emily answered, "Yes, I would tell Aunt Linda to use it where it matters." That argument created distance between Emily and her parents, but it also forced Karen to face a reality she had avoided. Her daughter was not being deprived. She was becoming more compassionate. Sophie took longer. She remained distant for another year. Then Richard's commercial property business experienced serious financial problems. A development deal collapsed, several tenants left, and legal costs increased. The family was still far from poor, but for the first time, Sophie watched her parents worry about money. She called me one evening and said, "Mom always made wealth feel permanent. I thought people who struggled had simply made bad choices. Now I realize how quickly circumstances can change." I listened without reminding her of anything she had said. She apologized for discussing our estate and admitted that she had viewed inheritance as part of her financial plan. "It was disgusting," she said. "I didn't see it then." I told her that growth mattered more than guilt. Karen, however, never fully apologized. 3 years after our argument, she came to visit when Michael was recovering from heart surgery. She brought food and stayed for several hours. Before leaving, she stood beside the front door and said, "I still think family should inherit family property." I replied, "And I still think people should decide what happens to the life they built." She sighed, "I was wrong to discuss your estate with the girls." It was not a complete apology, but it was the closest my sister could manage. "I appreciate you saying that," I told her. Then she added, "For what it's worth, Emily has become a better person because of all this." "So have I said. Michael recovered, and life continued. We updated our estate documents once more, not because anyone pressured us, but because our circumstances changed. Emily was named as the person responsible for distributing family photographs and heirlooms, while the professional executor remained in charge of finances and property. The charitable gifts stayed exactly as planned. We also decided not to wait until death to see the impact of our money. We began making annual donations while we were alive. We funded a small scholarship for a woman completing a healthcare certification. We helped the shelter replace an unreliable van. Michael supported a program that provided temporary foster care for pets belonging to women entering emergency housing. The joy we felt from those gifts confirmed that we had made the right decision. One afternoon, I attended a graduation ceremony for Maria, the woman I had met years earlier at the shelter. She had completed her nursing program and secured a full-time position at a rehabilitation center. Her daughters sat in the front row wearing matching blue dresses. When Maria's name was announced, they cheered louder than anyone in the room. After the ceremony, Maria hugged me and said, "You believed my life could become something different before I believed it myself." I drove home thinking about inheritance. Most people think inheritance is what we leave behind after death. Money, property, jewelry, land, and possessions. But maybe inheritance can also be what we choose to change while we are still alive. A person does not need to share your blood to carry forward the good your life created. My nieces did not lose anything that belonged to them. Instead, they gained something our money could never have purchased for them: perspective. Emily became deeply involved in the shelter and eventually helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sophie began volunteering with a financial literacy organization. Even Karen became quieter whenever people discussed what they were owed by relatives. As for our home, the kitchen wall is still standing. Sometimes Emily jokes that it is safe from her renovation plans. We laugh now, but we both understand how much that careless sentence changed. It forced Michael and me to question an assumption we had carried for years. It exposed entitlement within our family. It created conflict, distance, and painful conversations, but it also pushed all of us to grow. I no longer believe that love must be measured by inheritance. Love is shown in the years before a will is ever opened. It is shown through care, honesty, respect, presence, forgiveness, and the ability to see another person as more than what they may leave behind. When Michael and I die, our family will receive our photographs, stories, heirlooms, and memories. They will receive the proof that we loved them. But most of our money will go to people who need safety, education, opportunity, and a second chance. And I feel no guilt about that. This is Unheard drama stories, where quiet family decisions often reveal the loudest truths. Subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories about betrayal, boundaries, inheritance, and the moments that change families forever. Now tell us in the comments, were Linda and Michael right to leave most of their estate to charity, or should family always come first? And if you discovered that your relatives were already discussing your money and property while you were still alive, would you change your will too?